Well, good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, 3:30, we talk to Senator Rand Paul. Senator Dr. Rand Paul. Which one goes first? But we'll be talking to him at 3:30 about the government censoring you. Censoring speech in the United States of America. Brand new information out in the last 24 hours on that horrifying subject. We talked to Rich Anderson at 4:30, the chairman of the Republican Party in Virginia, as we await the closure of polls this evening. It's Election Day. Have you voted yet? Now's your chance. Congressman Pat Fallon will be with us at 5 o'clock. And then at 5:30, from Real Clear Investigations, a man who's been digging into government censorship of the American public, Ben Weingarten, is here. You can join us, and I hope you do, at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. What does your polling place look like today? If you didn't vote early, if you decided to go vote on Election Day, what did you see? Were the people nice? What party were they affiliated with if they were nice? 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I did go today. I decided I had my pick of the litter, and I said, okay, I'm going to go on Election Day specifically because I wanted to see the scene. I wanted to see how loaded up things were. I voted in Fairfax County, Virginia, and when I went and cast my vote, well, there was almost nobody there. It was the middle of the day today. I was headed into the studio and went over to vote first, and there was basically nobody there. But I spoke to the poll workers. I asked them how busy the place had been. They said it was very busy this morning. A lot of people showing up in the morning in Virginia to vote, get in there. And the Democrats, I saw the Democrats outside. I didn't see any Republicans outside handing out sample ballots. That was disappointing. But the Democrats were out there handing out their sample ballots. Sir, would you like a ballot? Sure. They ask you if you want a sample ballot before they tell you which party it's for. I was like, yeah, sure. I'll take your sample ballot. I knew. I could see. It was a blue ballot. I knew what they were doing. This is for the Democrats. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Just give me the ballot. It's helpful, too. It's a cheat sheet for you. If you don't know who to vote for, just vote for the opposite of whatever the Democrat ballot is. Like, for instance, if the ballot says, would you like to take out more money to pay for this project that you will never be the beneficiary of, you just vote no. This is not difficult. Would you like the government to incur more debt? No. But we'll send you a check. It's no. Just vote against it. This is obvious stuff. There are places, of course, where there are only Democrats on the ballot. You don't have a Republican option, so that is when you write in Corey in Ganamort. That's what I did today. I voted for Corey in Ganamort. I said, I'm not voting for this Democrat. I'm voting for Corey in Ganamort today. So hopefully that shows up in some state record somewhere that the producer of the Vince Coglianese Show has been voted for, at least on one ballot in Fairfax County, Virginia. Like I said, I did get a sample ballot from the Democrats. The lady that gave it to me was perfectly nice. She's completely wrong about her politics, but she was a perfectly nice woman. Won't take that away from her. But that's not true everywhere. That's not true everywhere. There are lunatics all over the state of Virginia right now harassing Republicans just for being Republican. So here, for instance, is an Arlington man who was ranting at the chairman of the Arlington GOP. He was handing out sample ballots for the Republicans this morning in Arlington. Matthew Hurt was. In fact, I heard Matthew Hurt stop by the Chris Plant program this morning to talk about his experience. And as he was standing outside in Arlington, handing out sample ballots, being as nice as you can possibly be. So, hello, sir, would you like a sample ballot? The sweetest guy. This is the type of crap he has to deal with. A lefty on the loose starts screeching at him.
When you people tried to overthrow the election, you might as well have been walking up to my head on the way to the polling station, putting a gun to my head, and trying to tell me not to vote.
All right, let's not get hysterical. What are you talking about, buddy? And I love this. You realize his party has tried to overturn every election this century, and the one time Republicans raised some objections, excuse me, I think the election might not be on the up and up. Oh, shut up, you insurrectionist. Look, this guy, he's got all the talking points, like a full-blown Rachel Maddow download right to his brain and coming out of his mouth.
My head on the way to the polling station, putting a gun to my head, and trying to tell me not to vote. You expect me to not take that personally? You try to overthrow elections with violence?
We can make it personal, but I don't even know your name. I'd be happy to make this personal. What's your name, big man? Like, you're confronting the guy handing out sample ballots in Arlington?
And then you're out here?
And by the way, like, what are the chances that Republicans sweep in Arlington? What threat are the Republican poll workers, the guys who are handing out some sample ballots in Arlington? They can't stomach any dissent whatsoever. Watch, if Republican candidates there get 10 votes, they will be hunting for the 10 people who voted for Republican candidates. It's North Korean.
Among decent people?
Thanks for coming out
to say that, huh? What are your policy prescriptions?
Have a nice day. You've
rapist rights?
Yeah.
Involving yourself in people's families?
Rapist rights? You know, we could go point by point on this guy's idiocy, you know, including that he's a part of the party that's openly supporting Hamas at this point, the rapist murderers in the Middle East. You know, he's a part of the party that supports the wholesale destruction of babies in the womb. This is his party that he's talking about. The party that people of all colors are rapidly running away from. And the party that's historically associated with every act of bigotry and racism our country's ever known. That in terms of, if you're going to pick a political party you could tag with that particular problem, it'd be the Democrats. It's an American pastime for them. So here he is lecturing the Republican guy, the guy with the manners, the guy who's treating him well, the perfectly decent person. He's lecturing him about what a bad person he is in one of the most obvious cases of projection that you or I will hear all day.
Bedrooms?
It's pretty wild.
You animal. You try to steal my vote next.
What's funny, too, is this guy keeps walking away like, and he's like walking towards his Prius. Of course it's a Prius. It's hilarious. Corey, did you say he was prancing towards his Prius today? He was prancing. He did some he was wearing cargo shorts. Well, you know, that probably tells you his age. That guy's got to be about 40 then, I would guess. Those were his heydays. The cargo pants in high school. That was his peak, and it's been downhill ever since.
Here, I'm gonna remember you personally.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm taking.
What a fascist this guy is. So here he is claiming that he's a great defender of democracy, and he said, "I'm going to remember you personally," and now he says, "I'm going to take a picture of you."
Picture. Is that all right?
Yeah, you
Permission?
can. Yeah. It's a one-party consent state.
Yeah.
It's a one-party consent state, he says. In other words, if you or I are having a conversation, one of us can decide to record it, even without the other one knowing. It's one-party consent. Some states are two-party consent, where both people need to consent to that conversation being recorded.
One-party state. You want a one-party country is what you want.
Hey, sir, how are you? Headed in to vote? Yeah. Could I get a Republican sample ballot? Sure, thank you.
See, that was a perfectly good conversation. The guy said, "No, I'm good, thanks," and he walks off. And now, who knows? I don't even know. Is that guy a Democrat? Maybe. Is that guy a Republican voter? Maybe. Maybe he's already got maybe he did his homework. By and large, my guess is that a lot of Democrats show up to the polls and they have no idea who they're voting for until they're told to. The Republicans, by and large, are probably doing their homework before they get there. They're like, "Oh, I know who I'm going to vote for. I'm going to support that guy. I'm going to vote for Corey and Ganamort in this particular write-in." Or Ed Nuttall, by the way. That is a real write-in campaign today against Steve Descano in Fairfax County. Ed Nuttall. Hopefully your polling place has his name listed. They have those signs outside the polling place. Aren't the signs the funniest feature of the polling place? Aren't they the craziest? You show up and they're like, "Vote for John Smith for school board." That's all they say. They don't tell you what party the guy's with. All they say is vote for John Smith for school board. And who shows up to the polls and says, "I'm voting based on whoever has the most signs"? Who gets there and brings a little piece of paper with them and goes, "Yeah, I'm going to pick the funniest names"? What? Like, I don't even understand that. I get the vote for Ed Nuttall. It's a write-in campaign. They show you, like, write it on the line. That's at least helpful. It's a good reminder because his name's not going to appear on the ballot. But beyond that, who's compelled by the sign they see outside the polling place? What low IQ voter is relying on? I hope they have signs there.
You know, try not to be buddy-buddy with these people because they put on the face of a good neighbor.
Okay, so this is the deranged Arlington Prius driver. He comes back because he's angry that the gentleman who walked by, who was asked, hey, would you like a Republican sample ballot? He said, no, thank you. And he just kept walking. The deranged Prius guy wanted to lecture him on be careful when people treat you nicely. They're actually demons.
One-party state. You want a f***ing one-party country is what you want.
Hey, sir, how are you? Headed in to vote?
Yeah.
Could I get a Republican sample ballot? Sure, thank you.
You know, try not to be buddy-buddy with these people because they put on the face of a good neighbor, but they support lynch mobs or the KKK, or they're f***ing Bible-beating bigots and freaks.
Now, who would you want to have a beer with out of those two people? Would it be Mr. Matthew Hurt, the Arlington County GOP chairman, or would you like to be with deranged Prius driver who screams about lynch mobs?
Yeah, they're not good neighbors.
They're not good neighbors. What a wild experience. What did that guy circle back for more? I don't know. Let's ask Matthew Hurt. He's on the phone right now, line 11. Matthew, who just called in. Hello, sir.
Hey, Vince, it's great to be with you. You know, what you're seeing in that video is actually the second time, my second interaction with him.
I knew it.
He went in hot when I tried to give him a sample ballot. Of course, you saw the meltdown. He went into the polling location, cast a ballot, and at that point, I knew he was going to come back out. So I put my phone in my shirt pocket and started filming. And, of course, he did not disappoint.
He did not. He really delivered. It was great. It's great content. Is it your – now, it may be hard to suss it out in the video format or on audio for radio. But when you were there in person with him, did you get the impression that he has a happy, well-adjusted life?
Not exactly. And in fact, according to my friends on the X, they tell me that he does this quite frequently. Allegedly, he interacted with Donald Rumsfeld in the early 2000s. He was on the White House lawn in 2018.
On the lawn?
Allegedly on the White House lawn at an event that President Trump was engaged in. And as of about an hour ago, I have filed a police report. I've identified the gentleman. I know his home address. It's not something I'm going to share with you or your listeners today, but I filed a police report because this does seem to be a series of ongoing menacing and threatening behavior, at least in person, and I suspect online.
There was a point in that audio that I just played where he suggested something about, if you steal my vote, I'm coming after you personally, I'm taking your picture. Is that what you interpreted as kind of the menacing?
I did, and at the time, it's so funny to live in Arlington where 80% of my neighbors living and dead voted for Joe Biden. You rarely encounter a progressive in the wild where they're able to sort of come to terms with meeting a conservative or a Republican. Most of my Democratic neighbors are pretty nice. This is one that totally floored me, this interaction, and so no, I'm prepared for whatever is happening in the community. And as the chairman of the Arlington GOP, I'm so excited about the opportunity to expand our footprint here in Arlington. And it is going to make progressives mad, and they're going to do what they did or what this gentleman did this morning.
Yeah. Do you get the sense that there are a lot of people like him? I mean, I know you said that a lot of your neighbors seem pretty nice who vote for Democrats, but the authoritarian impulse is coming off of that guy. I'd really like for him not to be in charge of anything.
Oh, absolutely. This is the knee-jerk reaction from a progressive that we might expect. That said, over the last several weeks of early voting, most of my neighbors have been polite or neutral or said, no, thank you. I have not encountered this election cycle with the exception of this gentleman, and I was truly shocked by it and really disappointed. Because I do believe in an 80% Democratic community that I have to build a policy majority, and that's going to take Democratic friends, and I certainly can't seem to do it with people like that.
Yeah. And at some point you have to be kind of embarrassed that you've supported Democrats for this long and made everything so much crappier. I would think.
Absolutely. And to act like that as an adult in public. The other gentleman in the video, the older bald gentleman, was the Arlington Democratic poll greeter. So he was doing what I was doing except for the other team. Oh. And he was an absolute pleasant guy. 10 out of 10 would 100% have a beer with him somewhere. Very nice man who's British. He was a British citizen. He became an American citizen. And we were talking politics before the other gentleman wandered up. And after that guy left, the poll greeter, the Democratic poll greeter, kind of apologized for him and said, we're not all as pleasant as you and I are.
Yeah, man. Well, if he's going to start apologizing for wacky Democrats, he's going to be apologizing for a long time. But it was nice that he did it today. I really appreciate it. Matthew Hurt, thanks for the spur-of-the-moment call as we go through this audio and for capturing that this morning. Really appreciate you, sir.
Thanks for the opportunity, Ben.
Not everybody wants to vote for Democrats because, it's a democracy after all. You can choose who you want to vote for. But that's really ticking Democrats off. How dare voters choose something else? Here's another Democrat, an angry one in Prince William County, screaming his head off today.
Hey, young man, hi. All MAGA needs to go to Gitmo. You Republican MAGA are scum. You're scum, buddy.
Another happy, well-adjusted human being, just having a grand old time, enjoying the weather. Out in Prince William County, he said all MAGA needs to go to Gitmo. There's the authoritarian impulse we're talking about. Additionally, you Republican MAGA F word, a homosexual slur, are scum, he says. You can tell he's very pro-LGBT as well. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's not unbelievable at all. It's totally believable. But it's amusing and sad for our country that these people are running around. Whatever happened to involuntary commitment? These are the people who should be inside of straitjackets with padded walls, bouncing off of them, and ranting about Donald Trump quietly to themselves because we can't hear them. We shut the doors a long time ago. Sorry, is that too far? Is that too aggressive? He did say that you should be in Gitmo if you supported Donald Trump. Like the many millions of people who voted for him multiple times. He'd like you to be in Gitmo now. Coming up, Senator Rand Paul's going to join us. The effort to censor the American people during election time. We have brand new information on that. We know what it's like in the past. What is it like now? Senator Rand Paul's been digging for answers. We'll ask him coming up in just moments. Welcome back to the Vince Coglianese Show. Joining us now is Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator, good to have you with us, sir.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks for having me on.
These new documents that House Republicans have released this week about the federal government's censorship of the American people. Just give us your reaction to that.
It's extraordinary that we have members of the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI meeting with social media companies, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, to try to regulate and limit constitutionally protected speech. I tell people it's extraordinary. And even for broadcast media like yourself, it would be like you and I having this interview. And at the end of the interview, you also have your weekly meeting with the FBI that listens to the interview and says, well, that Rand Paul said some misinformation. There was some disinformation. We want you to edit that out of your interview. I mean, most radio hosts would be appalled. Most television would be appalled. I'm amazed that the whole country is not appalled, though, about them meeting with Twitter and Facebook to take things down. And I hope that there will be a swelling up of public opinion that will put a stop to this. I have a bill that will stop it. My bill would make it illegal for the FBI or any member of government to meet with any kind of media, legacy media or internet media, to regulate constitutionally protected speech.
How did the government start with saying that they wanted to confront problems with cyber infrastructure, in other words, stopping hackers or something, and getting to the point where they're actually regulating speech, the types of things people are saying online?
Well, this is the way it always starts. There's always a good excuse, and the first excuse for doing it sounds like something, gosh, how can anybody be opposed to it? Let's say it's child pornography. They want to go after child pornography on the internet, and I was like, I don't want that on the internet. Nobody should be. That's terrible. And so people agree to it, but then they change it to be more extensive. They keep adding to it, and then they redefine what their mission was on their own without congressional authority. And before you know it, when I say masks don't work for COVID, that's somehow been captured under this policy. And it is a real problem. And that's what's really happened here. You've had the White House, the CDC, the FBI, all these people calling saying, take this down, take that down. And like for a year and a half, the whole idea that COVID leaked from the lab in Wuhan, I've written a whole book about it now. That was suppressed by Facebook for a year and a half.
One of the amazing features of this saga is that they were also censoring the current president, or at the time, the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, the president, had shared information regarding his thoughts on the election, and you had members of the government urging the social media companies to censor the sitting president of the United States. This seems perilous.
Well, it's also sort of crazy when you think about it. They're censoring people who question the integrity of the election. Well, in 2016, they didn't, censor Hillary Clinton for saying she thought Trump stole the election or that the Russians somehow elected Trump. All of those accusations that Trump was an illegitimate president, they had no problem with that. So it's very selective. This is why you can't get the government involved with speech, because if they're on one side, they don't like Republican speech, or they don't care about Democrat speech. And this is why you don't want them involved with anybody's speech, Republican or Democrat. And we have people up here thinking that, right now somebody's complaining, oh, TikTok is very anti-Israel, so we should take down that speech. And it's like, no, counter it with more speech. You can't take down speech in a free country. It's against the First Amendment.
Right, absolutely. So one of the things I've also seen is that it looks like the censors are always going after Republican speech. They almost never go after Democrats. Have you noticed that?
And this is sort of the problem, and this is what I'm finding as I travel the country. People come up to me, and they're worried that there isn't equal justice under the law, that the justice depends on, the shade of your ideology. And this is going to lead to strife in our country. I mean, think about the 1960s when there wasn't equal protection based on the color of your skin, that African Americans weren't given equal justice often, and we fixed those problems. We've gotten so much better over the decades. That was a real problem that we encountered. But now it's switched to where it's not an ethnic misapplication of the law. It's based on the shade of your ideology. And all you got to do is look at how the corporate system, the court system has gone after Trump or anybody around Trump, and then look at what they've done to Hunter Biden. So if they look the other way for their own, but they throw the book, compare Manafort to Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden did everything Manafort did times 10. Manafort gets 7 years, gets a 20-year sentence with 7 years. And Hunter Biden, they were trying to negotiate a deal where he got no prison time.
You recently had a chance, it was on October 31st, to question the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. You also questioned the FBI Director Christopher Wray. Do you believe that they are still actively engaged in censoring the American public?
Well, here's the thing. I can't even get them to admit they were doing the meetings. Mayorkas is like, we weren't having any meetings. And I said, come on now, you were having meetings. You've testified to this in the Missouri versus Biden case. You were having meetings. Oh, we weren't having meetings to censor. Okay, well, were you having meetings to remove misinformation? But it's like pulling teeth to get them to even admit that they're having the meetings. We do know that when Missouri versus Biden, the lawsuit against them for trying to manipulate the media, the injunction from the judge said they could not meet any longer, and the Biden administration quit the meetings. And so that went on for a while. The appellate court, Fifth Circuit Court, upheld this, and now it's going to go to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court has gotten rid of the injunction, so they can go back to the meetings. But when I asked Christopher Wray, are you meeting? And he said, out of an abundance of caution, they're no longer doing these meetings. It's like, oh, that's because you understand the meetings were actually regulating constitutionally protected speech. It's like, no, we're just doing it because the court ordered us not to. But this is what amazes me is nobody on the left seems to care about this issue. Back in the 60s, they cared when the FBI went after Martin Luther King and after civil rights protesters and Vietnam War protesters. The left was pretty good on the First Amendment. Fast forward to today, nobody on the left seems to care about the First Amendment at all.
Well, that includes the American Civil Liberties Union. Where is the aggression out of an institution that's supposedly dedicated to protecting our civil liberties?
It's sad, and the demise of the ACLU, and they still do some good things, but the demise of them really came about when they got away from civil liberties and started, opining and lobbying for Obamacare and saying, no, health care is a civil liberty or whatever. And so they really lost the impact because there were times when libertarians and the ACLU came together to defend speech.
Yes. And
there's less and less of it now because the ACLU just became basically a mouthpiece for the Democrat Party.
It's unfortunate. I remember it was a couple years back, the ACLU used to be pretty aggressive against gun registries, for instance. They wanted to protect the gun rights of American citizens and protect them from the government.
Yeah, surveillance. Surveillance in general, they were good on that, and they still kind of are on some of the overzealous surveillance of American citizens and the idea that they're collecting our phone records and our bank records and all of these things without warrants, they're still pretty good on some of that, but they've diluted their effect by going after just sort of traditional Democrat sort of policies that they could have left to someone else and tried to just stay with civil liberties, and they kind of drifted away.
Let's move to foreign policy real quick, and while we have you, Senator Rand Paul, thank you for this. There is a consideration in Congress to pass Joe Biden's aid package of some $100 billion, most of it for Ukraine, a small number of it for Israel, and then also an equivalent number to, it seems, to push more people across our southern border. What do you make of this effort to try and link up all of this aid?
The kitchen sink approach of putting, $100 billion worth of aid for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, border, you name it, just throw it all into one big pot, is not going to fly. The House Speaker, I think, has done the appropriate thing. He separated out Israel aid, and then he paid for it, both of which are the right thing to do. And instead, you've got Mitch McConnell supporting Biden and Schumer, saying all the aid needs to be together and it shouldn't be paid for. And I think this is a terrible position. Most Republicans at home are tired of borrowing money from China to send it to Ukraine, and frankly, so am I. I also am tired of having new spending that's not offset. And so even though I'm supportive of Israel, I'll only vote for the aid if it's offset by spending cuts, and that's what Speaker Mike Johnson has done. So I'm proud of him for doing it. It could set a new precedent that any time, whether it's right or left or this foreign policy consensus of both parties wants to spend more money, we're going to tell them, take it from somewhere else in the budget because we're not going to borrow it.
What does it say about Ukraine and the way the American people feel about that conflict that Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden need to exploit Israel's suffering to fund that war?
I think they realize Israel's aid is popular, and they're trying to tie unpopular Ukraine aid to popular Israel aid. But the bottom line is we don't have the money. It has to be borrowed. And so I don't care how good the cause is. If you've got to borrow money from China to send it overseas, it isn't in our best interest. It's adding to the inflation, the rising groceries, the rising gas prices. All of these things that are squeezing the working class and the poor and senior citizens all comes from borrowing. And we borrowed $1 trillion just in the last 3 months. I mean, the borrowing is literally out of control. Our interest payment has doubled in the last 2 years. So we've got real problems that we face with our currency and with our debt problem. And I don't get it. The fact that McConnell sides with Biden and Schumer on this, it's not popular in Kentucky, I can tell you. There's almost no Republicans who support sending more money, particularly unpaid for, to Ukraine.
All right. The other Kentucky Senator, Rand Paul, thank you, sir, for your time today. Really appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.
It's just so good to talk to the senator. Appreciate that. I want to take you back now to October 31st, when Senator Paul was questioning Alejandro Mayorkas about all of this censorship that the government's been doing. Here's some of that audio again. Rand Paul with Alejandro Mayorkas, who should have been impeached a long time ago.
Were you meeting with social media companies to discuss content moderation? And your answer to that is no?
My answer
That's the specific question. Did you meet with them, and were you meeting with them to discuss content on the internet?
My answer remains the same, Ranking Member Paul, that we met on a periodic basis with other federal agencies and a group of social media companies to speak with them about the threat environment that the homeland faced.
Right.
It's a big euphemism for we were censoring the American public.
And this includes discussion of vaccine efficacy, mask efficacy, Hunter Biden's laptop. Are these meetings still occurring?
Ranking Member Paul, they are not. We do not participate in any such meeting.
And the reason the meetings aren't occurring is because a federal judge placed an injunction on you, and the Biden administration acknowledged that they're not having the meetings. So you need at least acknowledge that the court is talking to you about this.
Yeah. So were you censoring people? We were just telling the social media companies not to allow certain forms of speech. Okay. Well, then you were censoring people is what you're saying. Here's Rand Paul talking to the FBI director, Christopher Wray.
Is the FBI still meeting with social media companies?
We're having some interaction with social media companies, but all of those interactions have changed fundamentally in the wake of the court's rulings.
That's sort of an acknowledgement that perhaps you weren't just talking about national security, child pornography, and human trafficking, right? You had other areas of discussion that did involve constitutionally protected speech.
No, that's not an acknowledgement of
Well,
that.
then how did...
Well, first of all, why is he evading this? It's a part of the public record that you had FBI agents talking directly with the social media companies, encouraging them to either censor something that was already posted or prepare to censor something like the Rand Paul story. Do you remember the name Elvis Chan? You know that name? That's the FBI agent who was working to urge the social media companies, in particular Twitter, whose name shows up in the Twitter files over and over, pressuring them to censor content, pressuring them to get ready to censor the Hunter Biden story. You had Mark Zuckerberg lay out that it was the FBI who told Facebook to be prepared for a big dump of disinformation coming out, and it may involve Hunter Biden, they said. You had all sorts of left-wing organizations all collaborating on trying to stop the proliferation of true Hunter Biden news by identifying it as Russian disinformation. You had a cabal of former intelligence officials who all signed on to a very public letter, published ultimately in Politico, making the declaration that the Hunter Biden story had all the makings of Russian disinformation, leaving the public with the impression that Joe Biden happily carried around on stage with him at that debate. It was Russian disinformation, that Vladimir Putin was really behind Hunter Biden's laptop. That was an intelligence community special. That was a Biden campaign special. The FBI played a role in that entirely. This is not speculative. This is a matter of the public record. So for Chris Wray to say, no, that's not an acknowledgement. But we don't have access to the internet? We can't see all of this? We don't know this already? Of course the FBI was involved in censoring the American people.
Of discussion that did involve constitutionally protected speech.
No, that's not an acknowledgement of
But
that.
then how did you change your behavior?
Out of an abundance of caution, in order to make sure that we don't run afoul of any court ruling.
Oh my gosh, an abundance of caution. That ranks up there on the list of government phrases I absolutely loathe. It's usually the predicate to them taking some meaningful liberty away from you. Out of an abundance of caution, you're not allowed to go to church this weekend. You know, COVID. Out of an abundance of caution, we've made it so that your kid has to do school on computer from now on. Out of an abundance of caution. No more abundances of caution. I'm tired of those. My abundance of caution is for people who say abundance of caution. You know, Congress is in the middle of debating a censure for the Hamas-surrectionist herself, Rashida Tlaib, right now. And the left is putting on a display for the ages at this moment. We'll have audio of that coming up. They're just being so... Cori Bush, I think, just had one of the craziest speeches you're ever going to hear on the floor of the House. Very exciting. It's Election Day in Virginia. Some crazy lefties are out on the street screaming at people who are literally just handing out Republican sample ballots. And calling for them to be hurt and thrown in prison and on and on and on. You know, the lovers of democracy that they are. Let's see. Chris is calling in from Marshall on line 1. Chris, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Hey, we could do a lot worse than Corey. I think we ought to draft him, hey?
Corey. Oh, no. This is the female Corey. This is Cori Bush.
No. I mean your earlier comment about you wrote in Corey for office. So yeah.
Sorry, all my Corys are being smashed together right now. Yeah, Corey and Ganamort. I wrote in Corey. Yeah, Corey's a great American. Corey would be great in office actually.
Right on. Now,
but right now he's serving WMAL very well.
I called about the fact that when I was growing up, Fairfax County was conservative. And then Prince William, and then Loudoun, and they've all successively fallen. And I always say I'm calling from the front line of the heartland. Fauquier County is the first conservative bastion you hit
right
from the Atlantic Ocean westward or from all the way in Canada. Everything north of us is liberal. And the front line is where the battle always is. It's crucial that people get out. We've got all of our boards of supervisors, our school boards, crucial fights out there, you know. But about this guy that confronted the poll worker, that's a toddler having a tantrum. And when these toddlers get everything they want and it doesn't work out how they think it should, a tantrum is the natural reaction.
Yeah.
It's all they have to fall back on.
Yeah, he's been up all night eating candy. He's living on he's getting to do everything he always thought he wanted to, and he's still miserable. He does.
Well, look at the state of the country.
Yeah, he's right. It's a toddler.
Keep fuck here red.
Keep fuck here red. That's a chant I can get behind. Thank you. I really appreciate the call. Chris calling in from Marshall. Great American as well. He said would support Corey. Corey for governor, by the way. I'm starting that campaign now. Sorry, Corey. We're going to move you up quickly through the ranks here. Corey. Yeah, there was a Corey who ran for governor once. We've got another one, though. Corey and Ganamort. We'll get to that in the years ahead. It's 3:58.